Okay, so this photo is of me with a colleague from Goromonzi in Zimbabwe, outside Harare. I think I would say 60 kilometers outside Harare. Masimba Manyanya is an economist, but is retired, so he lives in a village close to a big lithium mine called Prospect Mine, which is a Chinese-owned mine. So he lives in the local community.
And for those who are only following us via the audio version, could you describe a bit what we actually see in the...
So in the photo, we are seeing me sitting on the right, if we are facing front, or on the left. And on the left is Masimba, who is a research informant and an old friend. I'd known him 20 years ago, and we reconnected because I was doing research at this near this lithium mine, 60 kilometers out of Zimbabwe's capital, Harare.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Henrik Alfsson. I'm a communications officer at the Nordic Africa Institute, and sitting here next to me is Grasian Mkodzongi, who is a senior researcher at the Nordic Africa Institute. And he does research on green transition, green minerals, and reindustrialization of Africa, and climate change as well. And the photo that Grasian just described was taken, as he said, during a field study that you made a couple of weeks ago or so, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, to Goromonzi mining area, not far from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. And we'll be talking more about Masimba Manyanya, the economist that Grasian interviewed. We'll get back to him later. But first, we're going to talk about the lithium rush in Zimbabwe and China's massive investments in lithium mining. So this is a research to policy conversation, and today's topic is lessons learned from China's scramble for Zimbabwe's lithium reserves. So let me open with a question to you, Grasian. Lithium is one of the so-called critical minerals or green minerals. What does that mean?
Yeah, lithium is called green transition or critical minerals in the sense that it's a key component of electric vehicle batteries that are now in high demand due to the electrification of the automobile sector globally. So it's a key component in those batteries that you need for electric vehicles.
And lithium, there's a large lithium reserve in Zimbabwe.
Yes, Zimbabwe actually moved from being sixth producer of lithium to fourth in recent. The recent report I saw showed that Zimbabwe produced over 22,000 tons of lithium, and that ranks fourth globally after China. So Zimbabwe has significant reserves of lithium, and we anticipate production of lithium to go up in Zimbabwe because there's a lot of new mines that are, being worked on and in the pipeline.
Yeah, from what you told me about your research, I understood that lithium reserves have been known in Zimbabwe for over 100 years, but it's only quite recently, in the 2020s, that we've seen a lithium rush. Could you explain a bit about the background to this rush and what effect it has had?
Yes, our oldest mine is called Bikita Minerals, which is in the southeast, in the south part of Zimbabwe, let's say 300 to 400 kilometers from the capital. This mine was discovered, lithium was discovered almost 100 years ago, and this mine operated long back ago, but it's been resuscitated because it was bought by a Chinese company. It's because even after the discovery, lithium was not used. There was no demand for lithium, never mind its discovery in Zimbabwe. And now because of the global demand for critical minerals such as lithium for battery manufacturing, we've witnessed a dramatic investment in Zimbabwe's lithium sector by mostly Chinese companies.
And that leads me to who gains from this development?
That's a good question. The hope is that Zimbabweans gain from these investments. But the current trajectory favors those Chinese companies who are taking the resource for processing in China. And I think the Zimbabwean government have tried to sort of encourage local processing, or what we call beneficiation of lithium within Zimbabwe. But the problem is that the infrastructure for that is not existing. What is happening now is that some of those companies are just doing half-stage processing into concentrates that are further exported to China for refining. So we don't have refinery infrastructure in Zimbabwe, meaning that we lose a lot of the value to China.
Yeah, so that leads me to my next question. Who loses then?
The country loses, of course. If you look at the investments, I think there's been some employment created in these new mines, but these are insignificant. If you look at Zimbabwe, the economic challenges facing the country, we would anticipate that the growth of the lithium sector could address youth unemployment and other socio-economic challenges facing the country. But currently, very little benefits is being derived from the growth of this sector.
But is there any specific group on the losing side?
Yes, local communities. Of course, a lot of people who live near lithium mines would expect to benefit from these resources, but then they are excluded. I mean, of course, there are people who have tried to lithium mine as small-scale miners, but they've been removed. The government promoted a policy of favoring large-scale lithium miners against artisanal small-scale local miners who are now being forced off when they were mining semi-illegally. So we would say currently local people are the losers because they've not benefited from these ongoing investments in the lithium mining sector.
So what should be done then, and who should do it?
Well, the government is responsible for minerals. I think rather than view artisanal miners as illegals and so forth, they should incorporate them in the lithium value chain, either as tributors to big mines, making sure that there are synergies between these local miners and big mining companies, and create a sector that's much more viable for local people that can directly benefit people. And it can also create policies that make sure that these mining companies are investing in local communities. We had such a policy, the Indigenous and Local Empowerment Regulations of 2010, which sort of forced companies to invest in local communities, but that policy is not being enforced, and I think its enforcement or its resuscitation can help local communities to benefit from their mineral wealth.
In your research, you've done research also in Indonesia, and you've also looked at Chile and how the government, other mineral-rich areas there, and how the government has then made policies to push forward mining there. What can Zimbabwe learn from the Indonesia and Chile cases?
Yes, Indonesia has rapidly developed by adopting putting together a good policy environment, especially in the nickel mining sector. It has localized the nickel mining value chain by making sure that companies that are mining lithium are investing in refining capacity within the country. What Indonesia has done is to, one, provide the favorable policy investment, and also making sure that there are incentives for these companies to do that, and also make sure that the state is an active player in this sector by making sure that state-owned enterprises are partnering with the private sector so that the state can derive direct benefits from the localization of the mineral value chain. And that's not what is happening in Zimbabwe. I think at some point there's Kuvimba Mining in Zimbabwe, which is a state-owned enterprise partnering with Chinese companies, but we haven't seen the localization of the mineral value chain, maybe to happen in the future. But currently the model that there's a lot to learn from Chile, where public, also a state-owned enterprise, is partnering with an American lithium mining company, Albemarle. And I think those two, Indonesia and Chile, seem to be pursuing a very progressive policies that seeks to localize the mineral value chain.
So let's go back to where we started. We started with development economist Masimba Manyanya, how do you think his situation would be affected by those policy changes that you now suggest?
I think local people in Goromonzi, like Masimba Manyanya's livelihoods could be significantly improved if the lithium mining sector can be able to benefit local people, because currently what we see as lithium mines are just exporting unprocessed lithium to China. And I think if investments are made in somehow local processing and involving local people in terms of downstream industries, if processes to invest locally takes place, then that could benefit people like Masimba Manyanya, because they just see lithium being shipped across into Mozambique and then to refiners in China. And I think if the government adopts or implement policies, of course the government have implemented a lithium ban. But the experience from Indonesia is that you must go beyond the ban. If you ban and then you are not able to process, then the ban doesn't make sense. So you must ban, but also make sure that there is infrastructure and supportive policy infrastructure to process minerals locally and build downstream industries that could provide employment opportunities for local people. So I think that's a model you want to pursue, and that's a model that Indonesia and more lately Chile is pursuing.
Thank you very much, Grasian. Thank you for taking your time to discuss and share your knowledge. And also for our viewers and listeners, I'd like to draw attention to the issues we've discussed now. You've authored a policy note on it as well, which is a great opportunity for a bit in-depth learning about this topic. And it's called Local Inclusion and Regulatory Control, Key to Sustainable Mining. Thank you, Grasian Mkodzongi, a senior researcher at the Nordic Africa Institute. And for our listeners and viewers, I'd like to also say that our policy notes are available on our webpage, nai.se. Thank you for listening.